Cool. There we go. All right. So let's try this. There we go. Okay. So I have... Hello. I have my Discord set up. Ooh. There you go. I have my Discord set up, and what we're going to be talking about today, and if you want to actually have a conversation in the Discord, that would be pretty cool. I actually bumped my snake cage here. So, one of the things I've been talking about, sweet, hello. I have been posting a lot of videos about the wolf issue. Mostly it's been about Colorado. I talked about Yellowstone a little bit. What's that? And part of the problem that I've noticed is that, well, it gets people fired up, like really hardcore. And what I mean by really hardcore is that the second that you mention anything about wolves being, am I? Why is this doing it? Can you get? Am I actually on here? Okay. It's just showing a bunch of stuff that I didn't necessarily want it to show. But how are you guys doing? I'm sorry, I'm still figuring this out because obviously I am fantastic at this, right? This is exactly... There we go. Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, I post these videos about these wolves, and I get a bunch of back and forth, and I wanted to kind of dive into a little bit what exactly are the numbers for this stuff, because though there's two sides to it that I really see. One side of it is immediately hungry like the wolf. Yep, Duran, good stuff. But as soon as you post anything about it, there's the side of the farmer should be able to kill whatever they want whenever they want to, which I don't think that's a good thing. And then there is people are just like, well, the wolves were here first. No matter what, people should be completely taken out of the equation. Screw people. And unfortunately, I don't think that's a good thing. I mean, you fall under two camps. You either believe that people should be completely screwed over no matter what because we're the most invasive species in the world, which, again, that's another argument you could get into. I don't believe that is the case, though. Or, I hate the people... I shouldn't say hate. Hate's not a good word. But I really don't like the people who the only argument that they have is that people or animals were there first, so therefore all people should be just destroyed or taken out of the area and it doesn't matter what happens. Especially, I am controversial like the wolf. How are you controversial like the wolf, Isaac? Is it Isaac or Isak? I've heard that before as well. But, you know, I get that all the time. Like, if I go through my comments, like, I'll read a couple of these out to you real quick, just so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Because, especially on, like, Instagram, they get unhinged. Like, if I go to Instagram here, and I talk and go to my wolf one, let's see. Why were the wolves reintroduced in the first place? Okay, that one wasn't as bad. You have to let the rancher shoot wolves. They need to eat. Wouldn't having your own dog help with this issue? That's a big one. What are they supposed to eat? Because I don't know how many people actually saw it, but there were 6 people or 6 cattle killed just this month from wolves. Through some people, there's many people who want to try to do good. Yeah, they want to try to do good, but the problem is that they don't know what they're talking about and just go off of feeling. And unfortunately, that doesn't really work. Some people are talking about, let's see, wolves were technically there first, would still have been there had humans not killed them all off. I'm not going to lie, people brought this on themselves by raising cattle in a place with a native wolf population. Wolves were widespread across the U.S. long before the United States existed. Wolf numbers are only what they are today because humans slaughtered them and put bounties on them. And I read that comment, and that comment screams to me, I live in luxury compared to the rest of the world. I don't know where my food comes from, and the wolves were there first, so therefore. Not realizing that if you follow that argument with the reintroduction part, you would have to, completely move. Okay, jaguars as an example. Jaguars were all over the southern United States for how freaking long? Basically throughout, when people were coming here, Europeans, there were jaguars in, I believe, all the way out to Alabama or something, Arkansas. They were that's a good one to actually look up first. Let's see, the jaguar historic range. Let's see. So, I mean, this right here just kind of shows it a little bit. But they don't know the exact extent, but they were a good portion of that southern range right there. There was one. Oh, here's a good one. Yeah, okay, so it was almost to Mississippi, Louisiana. Look at this crap. You're telling me you're going to reintroduce jaguars right here. Well, wolves being reintroduced might greatly reduce the coyote numbers that have skyrocketed in every state now. But will it, though? Yeah, they almost make it to Mississippi right here. I do know this is Louisiana. But, think about that. Would you reintroduce jaguars all throughout their historic range right here? Would you? I don't think that would be a good idea, considering, I mean, think about that. You would reintroduce them to some of the most heavily populated areas in the country, like southern Texas. You wouldn't reach it. I know there's wide, in between the cities, there's a wide area, but okay, we talk about the coyote population and how the wolves kept the coyote population down. Do you know the coyote historical range? I guarantee you probably don't. Not being patronizing or anything, but they weren't out east. They were only out west. Historic range. Yeah, here we go. This is exactly what I was looking for right here. All right, you see this? They were out west, not on the coasts, but have moved across the entire country over the past 125 years, basically. Completely across the country. It's there's a lot of reasons for that. Coyotes don't need to eat as much as wolves do. When wolves were killed off, there was one less predator for them to have to deal with. Coyotes also breed differently than wolves. We already have cougars in pretty much those exact same spots as jaguars, so what's the difference? The difference is that jaguars actually hunt people. Jaguars are known to actually go out and purposefully hunt and kill people. Panthers very rarely do. Jaguars are a whole different animal. Panthers are not big cats. I know they're large, but they're in the same, like, they're like, so cheetahs aren't considered big cats either. There's panthers, which, funny enough, the panther that we think of in North America isn't even technically a panther. Big cats are panthers. It's a weird name. Cougar is okay. So I'm going to use the word cougar because that's just mountain lion. We call them panthers, but the only panthers are the actual big cats themselves. Lions, tigers, leopards, only like actual leopards, not snow leopards, not any of those other types of leopards. Yeah, so like the difference between them on top of that size, jaguars have one of the highest bite forces of any land animal. They literally jump in the water to eat caiman. The things that jaguars can do is such a big difference between jaguars and panthers or cougars, mountain lions, whatever. It's not even close. And in their ranges, jaguars eat people on a consistent basis. Especially out in like the Amazon, it happens a lot. Coyotes went east when the wolves were decimated and went up to New York and Canada and bred with gray wolves. Now most coyotes from Texas, these are actually coyote wolf crossbreeds called coyote wolf or eastern coyotes. Some of them, I will give you, there are some, especially in Canada, they don't always interbreed. It's not as common as some people make it out to be, from my understanding. But there is that chance that happens. But coyotes, they don't attack people. On top of that, there's been like 1 or 2 actual coyote kills on people on record. Like, it almost never happens. And their breeding is completely different too than wolves. One of the reasons that, because like there's the Florida, now the red wolves. The red wolves were all over, I believe, the eastern seaboard up to like the Carolinas. There still is a population of red wolves in the Carolinas. And there might be some, are there red wolves? Let's see. Historic, oh my god, if I can spell red wolf range. Oh, okay. They were all over the eastern United States. But the current range is like a tiny, like here. Let's see. It's like a super tiny area in North Carolina. Like, that's it. And there's not many of them left. Let's see. You need to get your facts straight. Panthers are jaguars. They are the black jaguars. You're thinking of pumas or cougars. Cougars are the biggest of felines. Big cats start with leopards, and jags are slightly bigger than pumas. What are you talking about? Panthers are jaguars. Okay. I don't know if you listened to what I just said. We call, oftentimes, cougars, aka mountain lions, we call them panthers. Here in Florida, they're the Florida panther. It's a weird cross-up because actual panthers are the big cats. I did say that. I said it's a weird thing. How big are jaguars? Okay, let's see. How big are jaguars? Let's see this. 5D feet, about 300 pounds. How big are mountain lions? I'll just put mountain lions. 90 and 105 pounds. Let's see. Adult males can weigh up to 175 pounds. The males can weigh up to 175 pounds. That's a 125 pound difference. That is a huge difference. Jaguars are not slightly bigger than panthers. They're massively bigger than panthers. Mountain lions. The 2 confirmed deaths from coyotes, a young woman in Ontario. Yeah, exactly. They're called pumas, panthers in Florida. Yeah, there's so many different names for them. Panthers, coyote, wolves. It's not confirmed. I've heard that too, but I don't know the exact genetic makeup of all that, to be quite honest. Not all wolves and coyotes are all one species, complex and interbreed. Bigger is just more wolf genetics. That starts to get kind of weird. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but that gets kind of weird because it's the whole species debate and what is a separate species. Like, this is actually one thing I've started, like, I'm learning about evolution, like, specifically, like, the genome and everything in school at the moment. And one of the things we just talked about was, like, I literally did something last week talking about whether the new orca species should be considered a separate species or not. And what is a species? And it's a really weird thing because species, we just think of animals that can breed, then reproduce, and then their offspring can produce viable offspring. Because you can have a lion and a tiger make a liger, and most ligers can't breed. But a female liger can. It's weird because, like, we think we know what exactly a species is, but that's been kind of thrown up in the air, especially with genetics very recently. Like, the anaconda thing. The northern green anaconda and now the separate southern green anaconda species are split up, but they've been separated for like 10 million years, at least according to the genetic data, yet they can interbreed. Saying, colloquially speaking, people use panther loosely, and black jaguar is a panther. The black the black jaguar is just a melanistic jaguar. There are no mountain lions. I'm just going to use mountain lions or pumas. There have been no black pumas or mountain lions. There have only been black jaguars. And if you're speaking in technical terms, because they're big cats, that would be considered a black panther. But I guess it's so weird with the mix-up. The difference between gray wolves and red wolves is more coyote DNA. Is that really it? Well, when they were knocked out, is it just... That doesn't make sense, though. Because red wolves were here before coyotes were in the eastern United States. The original coyote... That doesn't make sense, though. Wolf coyote hybrids. That doesn't really... Red wolves are sort of a mutt or hybrid park gray wolf park. Really? Wait, the most widely accepted position proposed that the red wolf is a distinct species of wolf. The second... Oh, that's the second position. But that doesn't really make much... With plants, it's 10 times more complicated, I believe. By the way, whatever source you're looking at is incorrect. Who was 100? Average male jaguar panther around 200. They're about the same height, but about 50 pounds heavier on average. Okay, well, let's look at different... Okay, let's see. Jaguar weight. Let me look at a couple of different sources then. This one, okay, 210 pounds. Not looking at... Okay, I don't know what stone is. U.S. Fish and Wildlife says 80 to 348 pounds. I think the point is that they can get a lot bigger. A lot bigger. It's not even close. This one says 220 pounds. This one says Big Cat Rescue, 200 pounds, 220. This one says 347 pounds. The record weight was 347 pounds. The point is that they can get a lot bigger than Florida Panthers can, or mountain lions. Interestingly, almost all falcons can hybridize. Yeah, well, you know, the crazy thing, too, this is kind of off subject a little bit, but speaking of falcons, I realized that, I think it's kestrels are not considered, I think it's kestrels, are not even, considered, they're considered birds of prey, but they're not raptors. They're not, related to hawks or anything. Or is it falcons in general? I think falcons. No, it might be falcons or falcons. We did 2 hawks. I don't even think they're closely related. Falcons and hawks aren't close. Okay, so it is falcons. Yeah, but they're not closely related to other raptors at all. They're species complex though. Yeah, I get you got a Canis. What would a coyote be? Canis what? It's not Canis lupus, is it? How's the puma population in Florida? Has the conservation been working on increasing sustainable population? Let's see, add to the call. Let's see if I can do this. Let's see. See if this works. Hello? Started call. I don't know if this is voice connected. Sure.
Hey, your audio's not coming through to me.
Oh,
you have to do something on the back end.
Can you hear me?
Also, I was behind on stream, so I'm all out of sorts.
Gotcha. Can you hear it now? I can hear you. I gotta figure out real quick. Voice. Are we good now? Can you hear me? I can hear you coming through my headset, but not my... Low. Low, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now.
Okay, cool. There we go. Figured that out. Okay. So what were you wanting to say? What's up?
Yeah, no, we can talk about, we can spend the whole time just talking about species, dude.
Yeah, the species debate is great. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's cool you're getting into it because it's so, with species complexes and subspecies and, two ends of a species or two ends of a species complex might be able to interbreed, but if you take one from one end of the range and one from the other end of the range, they might not be able to interbreed. It's, at the end of the day, nature does not care about categories, and the idea of species is only a useful concept. It's not real at all.
Yeah, I think I've starting to see that a lot more recently. I want to make sure real quick, can you guys in the chat hear him? I don't know if you can or not. If you can, awesome. I'm still figuring this out. But yeah, no, the whole species, I think that the more and more we go into it, especially with DNA and like all the whole genetic thing, it's just a useful way to categorize things, but to follow it to a T is just not really useful.
Yeah, it's all about asking the right questions. So you can ask questions that just are meaningless because the definition of species, when you get down so granular, becomes wishy-washy. But, if we talk about it, most of the time, unless you're asking weird questions, it's a really good concept and it's great. Mm. But it gets way worse with plants, dude. Literally, the rubus genus, that's all raspberries, blackberries, dewberries. Yeah. It's like 200 species. Every single one will interbreed and make valid hybrids. The only thing that matters is their ploidy, how many chromosomes. So you can literally... If you mutate one to get enough extra pairs of chromosomes, it'll hybridize with anything in that family. Yeah. So then there are literally people, they make their family tree of the genus, and it's got 50 species, and then there are other people that make it and have 180. They're the lumpers and splitters, people call them, but it's a complete mess.
Mm-hmm. Well.
But we can let's bring it back to like predators and that sort of stuff, because that's what the whole stream is about.
Yeah, well, part of the thing that the debate with it is that if you don't split things up into that species category, it's harder to do conservation in general, because like if you left coyotes and wolves as the same species, there would be no point in any of them being anywhere, because how would you conserve them
Right.
at that point? Same thing with this whole killer whale thing. Like some people are like, well, what's the point of separating them out? Well, one of them feeds primarily on fish. That would be the residents, and then the transients. They eat larger mammals and have a wider range because they move around a bit more. But if you kept them as the same species and just did the same conservation, well, then all of a sudden, and that's one of the reasons that I think there was a push to make them a separate species, because the residents are having a harder time with their diet, their fish heavy diet. I believe it's the salmon. The salmon populations are they're drastically decreasing due to like dams and overfishing and stuff like that. So
meanwhile, marine mammals have completely rebounded because we're not hunting them for fur anymore.
Exactly, and that's another thing too, is that like not all of the animals, like I see doom and gloom all the time when it comes to these animal populations, and every article will talk about a mass extinctions, and like we're in the middle of a mass extinction. It's like, but if you look at the actual like physical data, there are a ton of animals that are rebounding and are to such an extent where like their populations are better than they've ever been, at least in recent memory. Like even whales. Sorry.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. There are lots of species in America, native species, that have higher populations than they were before Columbus came here.
Yeah.
A perfect example is snow geese. So snow geese, native species, they're literally our habits, mostly agriculturally related. There's less die off from the migration because they can stop and eat corn the whole way. They're destroying their own Arctic tundra ecosystem where they breed because there's too many of them.
Oh, jeez. I didn't know that. I mean,
they pay researchers. They have to go out and oil the eggs. If you just smash the eggs, they lay more, and you defeat the purpose. But if you cover the eggs in oil, they spend the whole time laying them and they don't ever hatch.
Really?
But it's crazy.
Oh,
huge problem.
Well, Isaac says in the comments that North American rat snakes are his favorite species on the planet, and their taxonomy is a perfect example of what you're talking about. Exactly, because as an example, in Florida we have 4 that were considered 4 different species at one point. You have the Everglades rat snake, the yellow rat snake, the gray rat snake, the Gulf hammock rat snake, and I believe in certain parts we also have the black. But they're all considered the same species, because the Gulf hammock, which I actually have one, is just an intergrade between the yellow and the gray. But the yellow and the gray, so the yellow and the Everglades look very similar. They're yellow with the black stripes, and then the gray looks like any other rat snake you'd find across North America. But they're all considered the same species now. It's such a weird thing. And like the eastern rat snakes go all the way up to Tennessee, I think, or is it northern Georgia? It's something like that. It's just a bit convoluted how some of these, like another one that I was thinking of was the pine snakes and the gopher snakes, and the with the pine, the gopher, and what was the other one? There's another one, but they're all basically the same species, and like the intergrades between them are just nonsensical because they all just kind of melt together.
They just prefer slightly different habitats.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, that's how speciation happens, but...
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is it's interesting, sometimes you'll get these color morphs, like in the case of the gopher snake in the Everglades with these different colors, but the snakes don't really care at all, and there's clear interbreeding along the edges. Then you'll get stuff that, a good example is with songbirds. Mm-hmm. So the reason there's so many different species of songbirds, and some of them look almost identical, is because when songbirds are choosing to mate, it's based on the song. It's not based on any other characteristic. So to make a new species, it's almost like an evolutionary technology the bird song. Mm-hmm. It's like just this tiny thing allows us to spin off new species easily, and just having that ability to spin off new species allows you to fill niches easier. So it's interesting what the actual species or subspecies care about and what they don't, and how that'll affect their breeding, like versus habitat.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different little ecological niches that things like the sea wolves in Alaska. Is it Alaska? I think it's Alaska, where these wolves are starting to eat fish and like are starting to get longer webbing on their feet because like the population went after caribou. When the caribou populations went down, they started eating all these fish, and now it's like almost a completely separate thing, and eventually, given enough time, will be their own separate species. Real quick with Nicole, aren't Chinese alligators doing a bit better now thanks to some breeding projects? I know there's a lot of breeding projects with them. I don't know about their numbers. I know their numbers are very low, but I believe with the breeding projects now, they're at least trying to help, and that's the start. Given enough time, I'm sure that will help. Are you still there?
Yeah. Do you know, like, how closely related are the Chinese and American alligator? Like, when did they last separate?
I don't know when they last. It was a while ago.
And yeah, I figured, but I just you're the reptile guy. Like, how separate are crocodiles and alligators genetically? Like, are they like 50 million years or 100 million years? Are they separated, or?
I think it's a lot longer than that. Let's see.
That's cool. See, I didn't know, but I'm just asking you.
Yeah, that's what I'm. Ducks and alligators. Oh God, that's something that I have to look into because I am not 100% sure on that. Because I mean, each species of crocodile and alligator are completely different. I think the alligators are more recent. I believe. I think the crocodiles. Did they come from the same lineage? I don't. That's something I'm going to have to look up because I'm going to look dumb if I keep on looking this up like this. But here's the thing. I love animals. Obviously, I talk about them all the time, but it's not that I'm sitting here. I'm not a Google warrior necessarily, but it's a lot of the stuff. Like, I know about an animal, I know a few facts about it, and I got to go and look and see a little bit more bits and pieces. There's so much, especially when it comes to the evolutionary history of some of these animals. Bro, I mean, crocodilians go back so far, and sometimes it's hard to find this information. So that's something I'm definitely going to have to do a little bit more research on. I'm not exactly sure when they split off.
Yeah, it's real interesting. I mean, we can try and round it back to these.
Well,
reintroducing North American predators, and relationship with rangers.
Exactly. So here's the thing, and it's so funny. I had somebody on TikTok comment. They unfollowed me. They're like, oh really, unfollowed? And I'm like, I try not to give my opinion as much. I try to mostly leave it more of an open-ended question because honestly, it doesn't matter what my opinion is of a lot of these things. I'm just talking about something that I saw in the news that I found that was interesting, and I've been keeping up on this because people really seem to have a like they're one side or the other firmly. There's almost no in between. And so part of it, don't get me wrong, is for views because I know people are going to comment on this stuff. But when it comes to the whole wolf thing, I hate it. I hate it when I see these comments of humans are the most invasive species on the planet, therefore anything that's a detriment to a person or capitalism or something like that is a good thing. Because they always turn it to the farmers and the ranchers being the bad guys in this situation, and that the wolves were there first, so therefore screw anything that has to do with people. I understand. I try to understand that argument, But I don't see that at all. I think that's completely wrong, because if you do actually believe that, well, then you should be the first one to pack your bag and go to wherever it is you feel like you would not be that problem, but then you're going to find that problem in every other place you go to. Like, we live on this planet with animals, and we do have a responsibility, because we have so much power in this, to try to protect as much as we can. And if humans are destroying a population of animals, I think that we have the responsibility to try to protect that species. But wolves are not going extinct anytime soon. They're not. There are so many of them, and we have definitely made some conservation efforts to bring them back, and that's a good thing. But also at the same time, I am a people first person. We live in a country that is very we're going through some tough times at the moment, and people are saying things like, well, these ranchers get paid back from the government. Well, where do you think that money comes from? It's the people that are paying tax dollars towards this. So, like, you're paying for that regardless, and if all it's doing is causing this big disruption, are the wolves really helping the native populations of animals? Because from my understanding and from what I've seen from these, like the Yellowstone situation, it really seems like wolves didn't really do much to actually fix the problem. That's just something that was pushed to seem like wolf propaganda. Like, it's so It's so confusing.
Yeah, so I think that's really well said, to be honest. First of all, I think it's really clear that we get out like, yeah, we're human first people. If you, again, and, I see where people come from with that perspective that, the wolves are here first, you need to stop ranching so the wolves can have their habitat back. I might have even felt similar to that, years ago when I was more naive, but it is a very naive viewpoint. And people just don't, I think a lot of it is really people not seeing the solutions that are out there. And there's tons of solutions, and there's...
Sorry, you cut out there. You just cut out, so I don't know what's going on there. Just let me know when you're back. Just looking this up, this just came out. One of the wolves that were reintroduced.
I think there's a couple of big things. They're nuanced. Like you said, it's complicated, and everyone is on one side. It's very clearly a multi-sided issue, and there's a couple of nuances, I think, that are pretty key for this. And I think...
Yeah, you keep on cutting out.
Every single one of these predators needs to have a deep ear, every single of them, unquestionably. And the way we do that is conditioning them if they see scared or hurt in some way, without accepting their natural, national park or not. And maybe if we do this, then you can establish certain areas of national parks, and you're allowed to harass the big leaf point.
I kind of got some of that. You're cutting out a decent amount.
Ah, fuck, that sucks.
There we go. Okay, I can hear you now. Real quick, and I don't disagree with you, from what I did hear. This came out a couple hours ago. Federal officials confirmed the death of one of Colorado's reintroduced wolves. So one of the wolves actually ended up dying of what seems like natural causes. Oh, this was reported on April 18th. So, what, 5 days ago? But it's just coming out now. You might have to drop and come back in.
So, I mean, yeah, that's the locals to this, dude. Farm those views, bro.
I'm sorry? Oh, farm the views.
Make another video on this.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about this tomorrow for sure, because like this literally came out 15 minutes ago. Like, this just came out about one of the wolves dying. I don't know. I just see.
Just to recap quick.
Yeah, just recap what you were
It's
saying.
just, I think them establishing a fear of humans and all of these things where we're reintroducing them is really important. And I think probably the best way to do it is to allow them to naturally expand their range rather than like, yeah, let's dump 10 wolves that are known to be predatory on livestock in this random area in the middle of fucking Colorado. I think that's a bad way to go about it.
Yeah, it seems that way. And of course, you get the people who vote on this. People vote with their feelings rather than what they actually think should happen. Like they vote. It doesn't matter what it is. People vote with their feelings on things, and the feeling is wolves are these big majestic animals that deserve to live, which they do. I'm not saying they don't, but you have to do it in a smart way, and I think this was definitely not a smart way to do it. And there's a lot more people in Colorado now than there were the last time there were wolves there. It's
I think that's so. I just want to like push against that viewpoint a little bit. Like, we don't need wolves all over the state of Colorado. It'll be perfectly fine having wolves in like a 50-mile area of grassy field between these cities. Like, that's okay and that's feasible. They'll have establishing highways. Wildlife highways for them is important in those situations. But like wolves are not like coyotes in that they won't adapt urban.
yeah.
And again, going back to what I'm saying, nobody will actually do this. I'm speaking just what we should do. But everyone in that case, I would arm everyone in the suburbs. Like, no, you see a wolf, for the first, 50 years, maybe you don't allow them to kill them, but give everyone guns with rubber bullets. Like, if you see a wolf on your property, feel free to shoot it as many times with rubber bullets as you want. I don't think that, or like use fucking sound cannons or some shit. And like that'll solve the problem. They'll know never to go around humans. They'll do their own thing. They'll be important in the habitat, eating calves. Less people do hunting, stuff. But going back to your thing on voting, again, this is a really controversial viewpoint, but like, people don't get to vote on what oil companies do and shit, and like what is the Department of Energy. If we had a federal department with actual real teeth, manned by actual scientists who understood wildlife rehabilitation and stuff, they would probably reintroduce these wolves well and don't let the people vote. It's like, sit the fuck down. We know what we're doing and you don't. You don't get to vote on this. You don't get to vote on everything. That's not the way America works. You don't get to vote on everything. Sorry.
And I'll push back on that a little bit by saying that there are a lot of things that we don't get to vote on. You're correct on that, or at least we think we should be able to vote on. But when it comes to allocating taxpayer dollars, which that would come from taxpayer dollars, it shouldn't matter what it is. You should have a say in it. And just by saying, well, you don't get to vote on everything, so in this case you have no say, that in and of itself is not how America should be. Like that's you should be able to vote on where your taxpayer dollars go to. And
no, but that's part of the executive branch. So the executive branch works, you elect the president and then the president chooses people. So I get it, like that's just the way America works.
Yeah.
You don't vote on the cabinet members. That's what I was saying. Obviously,
Gotcha.
You vote on the president, you vote for your senators. I wish I had better senators to vote for. I'm sure you do too. I would actually vote for one that did shit. But that's not the way America works.
I think I would rather have somebody who doesn't do things. I'm more on the edge of if somebody who is voted into office says no on most spending, I would be completely fine with that. But I understand what you're saying, and there does need to be some things that we spend money on, but it feels like most of the money goes to things that they shouldn't. And I do understand what you're saying. One of the problems I have is that, like here in Florida specifically, when DeSantis got in, and I mean I don't necessarily hide a lot of my political views. I don't like make it a big talking point, but like people know I'm a little bit more conservative. You know how many times people have called me like racist and a Nazi and all this stuff for just like not. I don't talk about anything controversial, I don't feel like, but just the fact that I lean a little right on things, people just come out with all this stuff and I'm like, okay, whatever, I don't care what you think. But my point is that, like, I did vote for DeSantis. I like him to an extent. There's some things I didn't like, but when it comes to like the nature, anything has to do with like conservation and everything, he's just flipped the ball on, and that just tends to be a Republican thing, sadly. But he
corruption.
yeah. What?
It's just corruption.
Yeah, and well,
ideally we want educated people making the decision.
Well,
not corrupt people hiring their friends.
Yeah, he took out the last FWC board member, like the chairman, and FWC is our fishing game, and he put in this guy, and I thought taking the other guy out was awesome because the other guy was doing like some BS stuff with like regulations, and it just, a lot of the stuff the guy did before didn't make any sense. But then with this new guy, Barreto, when he was put in, well, come to find out, he is in charge of, like, he's done like most of the development stuff in Miami, and like he is a development firm chairman. Like, he's a CEO of the Barreto development firm. Like, he is literally one of the guys that is responsible for the destruction of habitat in Florida. And that's the guy who's in charge of the Florida Fish and Wildlife. That is the guy that's in charge of making sure that our animals are protected, basically. And it's just like, when you get that guy in there, like, what is that guy going to do that's going to be beneficial to the animals? He's done a lot of stuff to take away rights of animal owners, and he has done a lot of things to, like, make the whole python roundup thing. People are like, oh, it's a good thing. Every year they go out and they go and catch pythons. He's made it harder for us to remove the invasive species that are here in the state. And what I mean by that is, like, the tegu as an example. You used to be able to get permits to trap them and sell them out of state. And there were people that I know personally who would trap thousands of tegus a year. And now you're not allowed to do that, and it's up to the state, and the state doesn't do jack squat about it, and now the tegu population is out of control. It's insane. The tegus are way worse than the Burmese pythons are, but no one will ever talk about that because all people care about is, oh, look, they do a python roundup once a year, and it goes blah, blah, blah. And so, but people have to pay money to do that thing, and the state makes money on the roundup. It's just another way for the state to make money.
It reminded me of a point you said earlier that I forgot my ramble at. Talking about species names and how important a name is for a species in order to conserve it. And, it's so, humans are so weird about that. It's like we need that little bit of lip service, like that rodeo, that's enough. That tiny bit of lip service, it's messaging, it's telling politics, whatever you want to call it. But all you need is that one thing. It's like, oh, they have a name now. They're not just a subspecies. Now they're going to be a conservation movement. Now they can.
You're cutting out a lot, unfortunately.
Fuck.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. No, naming them a different species, you can put more effort into the conservation, 100%. And then it gets very nitty. It's so difficult because you can't just make a subspecies just because you want to be able to protect it. And then, like, certain populations that are considered the same species, like the gray wolves as an example. Like, in certain parts of the range, they're in no trouble whatsoever. They're doing just fine. But in other parts of the range, they are extinct. Like, that's how the grizzly bears are. That's how the bison are. Like, there are so many. You can name almost any animal that was widespread at one point and be like, oh, I didn't realize the range used to extend all the way over here. I mean, bison extended all the way to the eastern seaboard when Europeans first came over and started. Like, they were all over. There were some that were in. God, there was one article I read where, like, one of the people, like, exploring a certain area found them in, like, I want to say it was like the Carolinas or something like that. Like, they were everywhere. They were in Florida. Like, they were everywhere. And now that,
supposedly, I mean, so I mean, there's multiple levels to this because there used to be, the Ice Age populations. That was a whole different ballgame.
Oh yeah.
Species either came, are directly descendant from an Ice Age species or are the same, and they existed in the Ice Age.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the ranges were massively different. So ranges are always changing, and, it's like we'll never bring back every species to where they once lived.
True.
It's a pipe dream. But species are also spreading into new areas naturally, and that's okay too.
Absolutely, and that's a whole nother thing that I was talking about very recently. But real quick, I'm going to read a couple chats. What are your thoughts on the red wolf? I mean, they're really cool. I've seen them in Lowry Park Zoo has a couple of them. I mean, they're cool. They're just like bigger coyotes that are like a rusty brownish color. They're cool. It would be cool to have them in the wild and other places, but to allocate the resources to be able to get them there is pretty difficult. There's very few of them. How far have tegus expanded in Florida? I mean, tegus are all the way up into Georgia now in different populations. Tampa has a lot of them. It just depends on where you're at in the state. DeSantis is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Am I right? I don't think that. I like DeSantis. I just don't like some of the things that he's done when it comes to the environment. Hey, I love Florida. He has done so much good for Florida. You might not agree with that. That's my opinion. Okay, anyway. So what you were talking about, the expanded ranges. I talked about the barred owl taking over the range of the spotted owl. And that's another thing. There was a talk of them, I believe it's Oregon and Washington and part of California, I think, is where the spotted owl lives. And they were talking about killing like 400... Specifically.
So just a little bit of context. The spotted owl was, it was the symbol of conservation on the West Coast.
Oh, yeah.
The symbol for, like 50 years. And they only live in old-growth Pacific forests. And the biggest issue has been logging and habitat destruction the entire time. And habitat fragmentation. That is the fundamental issue. That has always been the issue, and that's the real issue behind the barred owl.
Yeah, and they reproduce slower, I believe. It's also another thing. They have like a pretty like.
But if they had continuous old growth forests that they could live in that the barred owl didn't, it would be no issue. But because it's fragmented, it's more. It's less ideal for the spotted owl, and the barred owls can live in there no problem. So then they will outcompete them. Just like spotted owls they're very closely related, but they were restricted to a smaller range because the barred owl is better. That's another thing. Species are inherent. Not every species is this thing that will thrive no matter what the circumstances are.
Yeah.
Just like there's species that are expanding their ranges, even hypothetically without human intervention, species would peter out. And as a human, I would like to add, humans can do cool things. I think it's great if species that would naturally peter out get saved by it. And they live in like some small area, and you can go and see them, and it's like, look at that. These things would normally get out competed, but we kill 6,000 barred owls in the area every year, and we got this little patch where we can watch them with binoculars. Check that out.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that, because like that argument extends to it's natural selection. That's not really natural. I don't know. It's a weird thing because, like, literally the whole thing with the evolutionary process is that you have a species that has whatever that benefits it over others, and they are able to adapt to the environment and the situations that happen. And as you said, certain species throughout history, 99% of species that ever exist are extinct. Or it's some crazy number. Like, most of the animals that have ever existed no longer exist. And that is due to... And what?
And most of those animals had shit designs. That's why they're extinct.
Yeah, and they couldn't make it.
But even some of those animals had the best designs, way better than anything alive today, and just through the roll of the dice, they went extinct, and they're not around. Even though they could be way better in their muscular niche than anything alive today.
An asteroid hits the Earth, and all of a sudden, all these things that were just like the biggest animals on land ever just get wiped out in an instant. At least, it's just, it's one of those things where we're comfortable with the way things are now. We're comfortable because that's how we know it. But in all reality, nothing else has saved animals, at all. You either survived or you didn't. And we like the spotted owl because it's pretty, and that's what it's. And part of the reason that it's having such a hard time is because of things that humans have done. And if we can stop, or at least help protect that animal from the things that we are doing, I think we should do it. And if that animal is about to be wiped out, as you said, there needs to be some way to keep that species around to an extent. But if the barred owl, which is an animal that can outcompete it in its range because it's better suited for the habitat, is now there. Now, whether it's because it was able to expand its range west because of people, you can make that argument. But that doesn't mean that because it outcompeted the other animal that it deserves to not be there. Once it's there, it's established itself. That's literally just how nature has always worked. The animal comes in however it comes in. It could have been brought over on a little raft made of or on a log and transported across an ocean, and all of a sudden there's a small population that goes, I really like this here, I'm going to start taking over, and it outcompetes a bunch of other species. That's how it's always gone. And we're just comfortable with the way things are, and if we can protect the spotted owl in as much as possible, sure. Is killing 400,000 barred owls the answer? I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. But I could be wrong.
There is like a strictly political argument. What my first thought was wow, that's a lot of funding being spent killing all those owls that might be better used, right?
Yeah.
But then I am also immediately thought, because this thing is such a symbol for conservation, it's just like the panda, that.
God, the panda.
The World Wildlife Fund, with that picture of the panda,
yeah.
That image alone has generated billions of dollars for wildlife around the world. So even, the panda is a great example. We can shit on them. I was doing that before it was cool, before everyone had those internet fakes, and I was so happy about it. Shit species, objectively.
It is, yeah.
Let's keep them in zoos to get people to donate. I don't care. At the end of the day, whatever. If they're not a cost sink, it's like China spends $20 million artificially inseminating one only for it to die. But the reason China spends all that money is because they use it for fucking diplomacy.
Oh yeah.
Genius.
Oh yeah. They're all owned by China. Which, hey, I don't have a problem with them doing that either. That's fine. I think that's probably a great way to conserve a species on the brink. I think, America's mostly done with those, but the buffalo at the turn of the century, the California condor, there's a couple of those whooping cranes, there's a couple of those examples where there were 10 left. And probably nowadays the federal government would be these are ours. Yeah, you got a point. And then what Alex is saying, he said, what animal would you have as a symbol of conservation? My personal opinion, it might depend on the area that it's at. I think the Florida panther might be a pretty good one. Now, you could also say something like the Goliath grouper, but it's not as sexy as a panda. It's not, but the Goliath grouper, the amount of conservation efforts that have gone towards bringing them from the brink of extinction, they, in the 90s, they were almost wiped out, and now there's so many of them, they opened up a season on them now, and you can fish for them. You can harvest them. There are a lot of species that have come back from the brink. In Florida alone, the manatee, the West Indian manatee is another great one. Again, this is just in Florida. The American alligator. they were almost completely wiped out in like 40 years ago. Like 40 years ago, you could not find them. There was almost none of them, and now in Florida alone, there are almost 2 million of them. So like a lot of these species have made great rebounds. The panda will never rebound. It will never rebound in the wild, I should say. That's basically done. The amount of destruction of habitat that's happening, climate change that affecting like the only thing they eat, bamboo. Another one would be the koala. Like koalas are better off than pandas right now, but koalas are just as bad of a species. Like when it comes to, if you look at how they survive, it's a wonder that they've made it this long. But like there are certain species like that, but the panda is on there because it's cute, and like that's the biggest reason it's still on there.
Yeah, and I mean, dude, you're so right. Florida has so many good. The manatee is an incredible symbol. How about the green sea turtle, man? That's
Yeah.
What fund is that? That's like the national. There's some big organization where that's the.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact amount, but they've made a huge rebound. Like I'm going to talk about Florida because this is some of the stuff I know. But I know on the East Coast, which is like the Space Coast. Like you got Melbourne and Cocoa Beach and all that. The amount of turtle nests have exploded over the past few years. It's like such a drastic number. Turtle nests rebound Florida. Like it's I was see you still there?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. It says, according to the numbers provided by the St. Johns County Environmental Division Habitat Conservation Section, 2023 is the first year our county ever recorded triple-digit sea turtle nests, or green sea turtle nests, on its beaches, with a total of 133 nests out of 1,205 counted by volunteers. Like a ton of loggerheads and 15 leatherbacks. Like the amount of nests that are coming back to Florida alone is staggering, and it's because it takes a long time for them to get to the size to be able to breed, and that conservation effort took a long time for that to start to happen. But like every year from here on out should bring a huge increase in the population just because of the amount that are able to breed now. We're seeing record levels of certain species of animals rebounding. So there's a lot of good that has come out of a lot of the things that we've done over the past 30 years.
Yeah, I mean they're incredible, dude. A leatherback, a huge leatherback in the wild, is on my bucket list. They are one of the most incredible animals ever.
Yeah, they're incredible. You're right about that. And it's I haven't seen one in person. I know people who have. I know people who've seen them out in the Gulf. And I've saw some videos recently of some people off the East Coast where there was a leatherback. I might try to make it out to the East Coast like within the next month or so before the baby gets here, so that I can try to get some of the nesting turtles over there because there's so many of them. We do have them over here on this coast too. There's just not as many as there are on that coast, so it's only a 3-hour drive, so I might take that. But, Alex, you said, how was the Earth Day celebration you were at yesterday? It wasn't yesterday, it was Saturday. It was at the Miccosukee Lodge down in the Everglades. And I got to see Jeff Corwin. That was really cool. I got to ask him a question, but I didn't get to actually talk to him face to face. My buddy did. He was able to stay a little longer, but I had my wife, who's pregnant, is 6 months pregnant, so she was done with the son after that happened, and then I had my 5-year-old son with me, so I wasn't able to stay as late as I would have liked to, but I got there a little too early. But yeah, I got to see Jeff Corwin. It was pretty cool. Man.
That's sick, dude. I'm so jealous.
It was a last minute thing. I was very lucky, and then I got to spend some time with Thunder the alligator with my buddy Tyler. It's always crazy getting in his enclosure. That dude, alligators are so intimidating. Like it's not even funny how big they get.
Reptiles, man.
Reptiles in general.
Once they're like half your size, they're fucking. I don't fuck with them, man. You don't fuck with them.
No, I mean, here's the thing. I don't know how many times I've kayaked in Florida and have run across wild alligators. Sometimes they're sitting on the bank, sometimes they're in the water watching me. I've been in the water, like, fishing for snook in a lake, and all bass are in there too, and have had alligators, 50 yards away from me, 10-foot alligators just watching me from a distance, just cruising. And there at one point I could scan this certain part of the lake, and there were 10 alligators within, like, my peripheral that were all over 8 feet long. And it didn't bother me. Like, I had my, of course I'm always packing whenever I go out in situations like that. But, like, wild alligators, I don't know. I know how to deal with them, to get them away from you. But when you're in an enclosure with a large alligator that is hungry, it's not going after you. It wants the chicken in your hand, but is looking at you with its mouth open, and it's like leaning over this little fence. It's like, oh crap, this thing is huge, and it's right here, and I'm putting chicken in its mouth. What am I doing?
I hate the swamp puppy thing, but when you send me videos of that guy, I was like, wow, that's pretty puppy-like.
Yeah, the swamp puppy thing, I think that's more of a, I understand that I'm in a spot that not many people get to be in, where I get to actually, like, I have somebody that I can go to he's a great guy, that, like, can get me that close to an alligator legally. But, like, the whole swamp puppy thing is just something that you say just to mess with people, I think, mostly. It's, Fishing Garrett does that whole swamp puppy thing. I mean, he's definitely got it more popularized. But, I mean, I've called them that for years just because it's fun watching people's reactions when you call them that. But in all reality, I know they're not puppies. But they definitely have a softer demeanor than people expect them to have. And if you know how to act around them, they're definitely a lot more docile than people think they are. That doesn't mean they're safe. And I think that's what people...
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying, you need to know what their behaviors are, and you need to know what situations you're allowed to be in.
Yeah.
So, like, you in clear water on a kayak, no problem. 8-foot gators in general, they probably wouldn't fuck with a person, but, if you're all of a sudden you're surrounded by, 14-foot gators and it's, murky water, this is a totally different situation, right?
If it's breeding season, maybe. But otherwise, nah. I mean, you smack your paddle in the water, you make some noises, they're gonna leave you alone.
I didn't even mean kayaking.
Yeah, just being in the water with them. Yeah, we don't swim in fresh water here.
Well, supposedly you can swim in like clear running water, no problem.
Well, yeah, so let me put that caveat on. I know I'm changing what I just said. In the springs, yes, if you swim with them and they see you, and they have been known to attack people in certain areas, like Alexander Springs in the Ocala National Forest. There were a couple of gators in, like, this one little area that had attacked people, but they had a nesting site right next to a swim area, and so they were protecting their young. But if they're just doing their own thing and you're in, like, one of the springs, yeah, they're so used to people they won't mess with you. I've swam next to them, or not right next to them, but within, like, I could see them and I'm swimming in the water with them. Now, in murky water in our lakes, in our average bodies of water, because our bottoms of our lakes and our rivers tend to be, the rivers tend to be super tannic, so they're like that, the dark, they call it black water, sweet tea. That, I'm not swimming in that. I'm not swimming in a normal lake, because we don't have, like, it's just silt. and they're shallow, and they get very muddy very quickly. Anything where I can't see the bottom, I'm not swimming it. So growing up, you didn't swim in fresh water unless it was a spring. And there are alligators in there, but they're so used to people because there's so many of them, they don't really mess with you. But yeah, no, the only place I ever swam in Florida that was like murky, dark water was in Boy Scouts. There was a lake that we swam in that had alligators, but like you kind of had to, so you just sucked it up. And then there was a lake called Lake Seminole, which is in Pinellas, where we would do like tubing and stuff on boats. And I mean, shoot, there's 10-foot alligators in there. They allow alligator hunting in that lake, so there are big alligators in there. But there's some places. But 99% of the time, I live in Florida. You just go down to the beach. So, and no, Alex, you're not asking too many questions. Sorry. Seeing the Lord's eyes. Do you know why alligators are less aggressive than crocodiles? I don't know the exact reason for that, to be quite honest. All I know is that they tend to be less aggressive. Maybe I think it might have to do with their food of choice. They don't eat larger animals like crocodiles tend to. They mostly are eating like turtles and fish. And I mean, they'll eat larger stuff like deer, but they're not. Their main prey isn't bigger animals, so they probably just don't see people as food as much. But yeah, I mean, it's
Well, so one thing, kind of to tangentially relate it back to the predators, the wolves, being reintroduced to Colorado, it's nothing like the situation of the first ranchers in Colorado. Like, to bring it back to the alligator point, when did they rebound? You said in the 80s the numbers were still super low, right?
I believe so. I believe that's when it was low.
So the fact of the matter is there just are not that many old gators. Like in 100 years, there will be many, many more I don't even know how big they get, like 18, they max out 18, something like that.
It depends on where you look, but like I think the record was just over 16 feet, but there are people who claim that they've been up to 19 feet, but yeah, around 16 to 18, somewhere in there.
Yeah, so, I mean, if your lake is full of those guys because, there's been 80 years for those really old ones to develop, that's also a different ballgame. Just like, you hear the stories about people first going to Australia, the North Coast, with the fucking, there were tons of, like 18, 20-foot saltwater crocodiles that were, they ate anything that moved.
Yeah.
So it is reintroducing these things is still a very different situation. And, I often wonder, about the, the small gene pool left over from these, things that have been thoroughly hunted and shot by humans. Like, I think it's often the case that these are the most skittish and the most afraid of humans of that entire population. I mean, there's luck involved, being in the right habitat that's too dense for people to get into.
Yeah.
But I think the behavior is a significant amount of that. And some component of that is genetic. So we're literally like, we have the nerd wolves that are left. And people are still complaining about them. It's like, bro, you should have seen the wolves the settlers had to deal with.
I mean, think about what happened in France in the 1800s. Like, there was the beast of Gavardon. That thing, people were like, oh, it was this, it was a that, it was a werewolf. To me, from learning about that, I think it was just the fact that there were a lot of wolves, and they were hungry because there was a lot more people than there had been, and they hunted a lot of the prey species down. And all of a sudden, there's too many wolves, and they get very hungry, and just wolves start attacking people like crazy. And people are just blaming it on one giant wolf when it was just a fear and a panic because all these wolves were eating a bunch of people. Like that makes sense to me. But like, yeah, no,
It doesn't even have to be that complicated because rabbits they're cyclical. They're on 4-year cycles. So the predator population builds and then it crashes. So like, could have been a high rabbit year and like the winter was hard or whatever, or like the summer was messed up or whatever, and that's all it takes.
Yeah. There's so many things that we don't know about how animals actually react to things. And what do you mean wolves don't attack people? Yeah, they do. Maple Foxo. Wolves absolutely attack people. What are you talking about? Wolves have been known throughout history to attack people. Maybe not as much anymore, but throughout history, wolves have 100% attacked and killed and eaten people. Like, we look at it through wolves aren't some evil species. They are natural and keep elk populations low. First off, I never said they were evil species. I don't think wolves are evil. Never said that. Second off, elk populations low. No, wolves are not docile. What are you talking? Okay. I don't know whether you're trolling right now or what, but you're looking at wolves through rose-colored glasses. You're looking at them how we see them today, and people don't understand what wolves have been able to do and what wolves did do in the past. I am not advocating for killing wolves. I don't think it's a bad thing to have wolves around. The elk population thing is kind of true, kind of not. It just depends on the place. In some areas, wolves have wiped out elk completely. In some areas like Yellowstone, it's up in the air on whether or not they actually had an impact. It's a very complicated situation. I'm not advocating for killing wolves. I'm just saying throughout history, wolves and people did not get along that well, and they killed and ate a lot of them. And now we're talking.
Well, I mean,
what?
We do have to accept the fact that if all goes well, the end result, the best possible end goal, is that people are shooting wolves because there is a robust enough population living sustainably that we need to manage their population by shooting them. That would
Absolutely.
be incredible. You know, if our populations could get high enough, and you know, the other thing, you know, we've been talking a lot about ranges and expansions and decreasing and everything. So there are going to be places where, you know, around Yellowstone, we're going to have to start shooting wolves. But, you know, in southern Colorado, we're going to have to still be introducing them, and you're not going to be allowed to shoot them.
Yes.
And that's okay.
And that's fine. It literally is a state by state and sometimes even more micro than that level. 100%. Same thing with the black bears here in Florida. Black bears need to be culled in Florida. There are plenty of them. Their populations are not in any danger whatsoever. In fact, there are too many of them. And, you know, people just don't want to think about having to do that, but people don't understand that in order to have a healthy balance of all of these animals and including people, you have to have culls when you get to a certain point, and hunting is the best way to do that. And, you know, that's a whole different debate, but I mean, people killed wolves because they killed livestock. Never heard of wolves eating people.
It's important to have, though.
It is very important to have. So I can get into. I'm not going to get into it as much right now, Maple. But wolves have killed and eaten people in the past. Not as much anymore, but there are plenty of places and instances throughout history where wolves have attacked and killed people. It's just not as much in current days because they're in certain. Huh?
There is propaganda about wolves never killing people before, because I literally remember.
Is that a thing?
Playing it as a kid. You remember The Most Extreme?
Yes.
Sick show, right?
Yeah.
It was like the most extreme, most fearful animals, and literally most afraid. It was some weird one. It was like we were afraid of them, but we shouldn't be. The most extreme animals we shouldn't be afraid of. But literally the number one was the wolf. And they're like, there's never been a documented wolf attack on a human. And I was like, you know, I was like 8 years old, like, what? That's crazy. You know, I'm going to tell everyone that because that's so insane. So I think, I'm not sure if there were like only like written fatality medical records in America or something, or it was just like a weird thing, but that did happen.
I'll have to look into that. I don't remember that, but I believe you. That seems kind of absurd, to be quite honest. Because, I mean, it literally, if you just look at France during the 1800s, it was happening all the time. It was happening all the time.
I mean, I mean, I might be caught with my pants down or a little like Mandela on this. You know, I felt like I've had a pretty good run up to this point, not spitting absolute nonsense. But I remember like telling that to people for years, and then I heard about it on Rogan. I was like, what? That's bullshit. And then I Googled it, and I'm like, holy fuck. Most Extreme lied to me.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that because I would love to see if that's something that was actually said. That's crazy. Alex says, what are some spots you've seen American crocodiles in Florida? I've only seen them in Flamingo, which is like the southernmost point of Everglades National Park. Saw some the other night. And then also at zoos. But yeah, in the wild, just at like a boat ramp in Flamingo, which, you know, is where most of the videos of them come from. And River Monsters is a fantastic show. I love River Monsters. Jeremy Wade's the GOAT. But, you know, it's...
Dude, well...
Uh-oh.
On my thing on River Monsters, I loved it too, every moment of it, until I saw the episode on lampreys. And I actually... That was the first time there was a fish where I knew something about it.
Oh,
and
God.
I heard Jeremy Wade talking about lampreys, and I'm like, oh, he's like making up tons of shit and like sensationalizing it to make it seem more dangerous. And then I realized, like, oh my gosh, does he do this to every fish?
Oh, man. Well, what did he say about them? That was bullshit.
Like a lamprey, you know, you're not gonna die from lampreys. It doesn't matter if it's a fucking 8-foot lamprey. They're not gonna swarm you. It's just fucking. It was just like fear mongering. And you know, I'm curious. Maybe they were stretching it because it was like the late seasons and it's a fucking lamprey.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, like Aeropimals will still fuck you up. I think they're pretty legit. But I was sad when I watched that episode. Well, obviously he's a fucking legend. You know, anyone who pulls a muscle off the bone fishing, I have so much respect for.
Absolutely.
So much.
Absolutely. Oh, man.
Dude, the fucking stingray. Now I'm getting hyped on Jeremy Wade. Did you know the stingray episode?
Yes.
Where he caught like the biggest ever stingray with a rod and tackle?
Yeah, he was sitting there for like 4 hours or something like that.
I think they used like fucking tobacco to get it to lift off the bottom so he could pull it up or some shit. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, I remember that episode. Yeah, you could see them literally, as you said, the muscles snap, and he still has like a divot in his arm from it. Oh man, good.
That was the same episode?
I think so. I'm pretty sure it was because of the stingray.
Yeah, no, he's a goat, Alex. Keep asking questions.
Favorite other Animal Planet shows?
Oh, dude, if you don't say Steve Irwin, you need to fuck.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say. I was literally going to say if you think of any other show besides, you know, the Crocodile Hunter. I didn't have cable growing up, so like when I was a kid, and I was born in '95, if that tells you anything. When I was a kid, we just had the bunny ears, and we'd watch PBS because that was when like where some of the animal stuff would happen. So you get like the Kratt Brothers, which to answer a question earlier, yes, Zaboomafoo, I love Zaboomafoo, Jeff Corwin and Nigel Marvin were the two that I really got hooked on in the beginning, and then my grandmother would record VHS tapes of like things from Animal Planet. And, you know, the Crocodile Hunter was one of the ones that I watched. And then I had the recording of Walking with Dinosaurs. They recorded the whole 3-hour special, and I would literally watch Walking with Dinosaurs every single day from beginning to end. Like, that was the thing I watched. But other Animal Planet shows, honestly, I didn't watch too much Animal Planet. Because I didn't have cable. I just watched whatever I was given. So, like, you know, was the most extreme on Animal Planet. I remember watching some of that stuff. Monster Bug Wars, I think, was another one. But I watched a lot of...
Oh, dude, yeah.
And I watched a lot of History Channel and National Geographic, you know, like Monster Quest and stuff like that. I watched a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I would... I mean, this was pre-YouTube. It was almost immediate. As soon as all of the educational TV shows went to shit, that's when all the educational content moved to YouTube. So that's when I made the switch. But yeah, I used to watch tons of History Channel, National Geographic, and Animal Planet.
Dude, I remember, I think it was probably 2007, 2008, somewhere in that range. I had an iPod. Was it my iPod or was it my phone? I don't remember if it was my iPod or my phone, but I would download videos from YouTube and like download them through some sketchy website, and then I would upload them to my phone so that when we went to like a church group thing at the pastor's house, I could sit there and watch, Monster Quest and stuff like that, and 720 or whatever, you could barely see anything, and they didn't upload the full episode because then they would only upload it in quarters, so I'd have to download 4 separate videos to watch one full episode of Monster Quest, and I would watch. That's how I did it. I literally just upload it directly to my phone and just watch that. Oh man.
Fucking West, man. Unreal.
Oh, Untamed and Uncut. That was another one. That was another one, Alex. That was some of those old shows were fantastic, And then
dude, Dogs 101.
Yeah, Lost Tapes.
Nothing like learning about some random ass breed of dog you've never heard of in your life before, like a Kuchenheim or something.
And they'd be like, "Ooh, I could have that because it doesn't require that much attention or energy. I could have that in a little house."
Interesting. Yeah. Hypoallergenic. I don't have allergies, but
yeah. Oh my gosh, some great stuff. Well, I have to be up pretty early. I'm an old man right now. So I'm gonna end it here. But that was a lot of fun. I'm definitely gonna do this more. I needed to. I'm gonna spend all day at home tomorrow. I got to do schoolwork, and then make a couple of videos, and then I might be on later tomorrow. So I'll let you know. But if you guys who are watching right now want to keep up with this stuff, the Discord link is in the right there on the screen, discord.gg, blah, 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 whatever that is. Otherwise, just go to Discord, DNA Reptiles. Look that up, and I'll be able to let you guys know more, so we can get also a little bit of a live chat going through there. Sometimes it's a bit dead, and that's a bit my fault, but if we can get more of you guys in there, I'm sure there's a lot of animal conversations we can be having. So if you are interested in doing and being a part of the Discord, seriously think about joining up with that. Otherwise, I will obviously see you guys tomorrow with some of the videos I make, and hopefully I'll start doing these live streams more. I think I'm going to try to do, at least a few hours a night. So we'll get more up with that. So I appreciate you. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.